Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rachel Vingsness. I'm the Director of Career Development for the BRAC Center at Natick Service Council. And you've joined us for a class on Microsoft Word, the Advanced Edition. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who is our trainer for today, and she will take you through the key topics to cover.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining me and taking the time. We're going to talk about a lot of different things that you can do in Word today. Obviously, we all know that Word is a word processor and you can use it to write an essay or a letter or things like that. But we're going to take it to the next level today and talk about some other functionality that you might not use that often. With that, I obviously have to say that you're not going to be able to use everything I tell you for every situation. You're going to have a lot of cases where it might work to use one thing that I've tried here today with you, but not another thing. So keep that in mind. Know that this is for some of the special cases that you might have where you want to use Microsoft Word that you might not have even realized you could use Microsoft Word to do. So obviously, we know I have Microsoft Word on the screen here. I am using the desktop version of Word. So if you were to open up Word on your computer, you should be able to see a version of Word that looks like mine. You'll know that it's Microsoft Word because it's actually on your computer. I'm going to move this over. All right. Can you still see my screen? I hope so. Let me just make sure.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
All right. We're good. I just wanted to make sure. I was going to move this out of the way. Sorry about that. Just, whoop, there we go. Okay. So we're going to start. Obviously, you know that you can type in here. You have the nice ribbon up at the top, which has a bunch of different formatting options. So all of that is here, and you probably already know how to use most, or if not all, of the things up here in this basic formatting area, especially right over here. But I wanted to talk about a way that you can make your page a little bit narrower. So you notice that as we're writing here, you can continue to write and type and type and type and type, and then we go on to the next page. But if you want to, you can actually split your page in two. So for instance, you might decide that you want 2 columns or maybe even 3 columns. And what can happen there is that you get more of a newspaper-like look. So maybe you have a newsletter and you want to have kind of 3 main columns there. Now, the way that this works, you can insert these columns directly into Microsoft Word. So if I were to do that, I could go to Insert here. Oh, actually, sorry, it's under Layout. So you'll notice I'm doing the tabs up here as I click on them. So there's Insert, Draw, Design, Layout. And as I click on them, this area, this ribbon changes. So when I go to Layout here, this is where I can add all sorts of things, but the one that we're going to talk about today, columns. So when you go to columns, it's going to give you some basic options, but you can also choose whatever makes sense for you by clicking more columns. They give you the basic options right up front because that makes it super easy. So if I were to pick 3 columns, you'll notice now it's starting to go onto another line. So as I continue to type here, it's going to go over onto this and it's going straight onto there. You'll notice that there's kind of a barrier right here. If I were to type enough, it would go into that next column. So I can't click into that column right there. I would have to go all the way down and type everything. And that's why I said it's kind of like a newspaper headline, because you're going to be able to have those newspaper columns like you're seeing. So something to keep in mind, and you can do it in a number of ways. You can have one skinny column and one fat column. So you'll notice now this column here is really, really wide. And then we've got the narrow one. And you can also choose if you want to, if I go to more columns here, I have the option to put a line in between the columns. So that will show up with a little line like you can see here. So maybe we have some introductory information that goes in the little column and then we go on to the next one. So if I click OK here, that's what it's going to look like. You're going to automatically get a line there. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, that's nice that there's a column there, but I want to be able to write a little bit in this column and then immediately come over and start something new in this other column. The way to do that would be a little bit different. So I'm going to go back to one column so everything's nice and even. And actually right now it looks like it's, there we go. Now everything's nice and even. And I just have one column here. But what you can do is you can insert a table to give you that same illusion of having those columns, but you have a lot more control over what you're putting into them. In fact, in my job, I write a lot of newsletters, and those newsletters are made out of a table, which is kind of funny. You might not think that you would use a table to do that, but you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to insert here and put in a table. And I'm just going to make it a 2-column table, but I'm going to make a couple cells here. I'll get rid of the stuff that I was working on so that we can do this from scratch. Now there's a couple things. Some of you might like the lines here. It might be nice to have the lines, but some of you might not, depending on what you're working on. So just know that in general, you can, for a specific cell, you can come up here to the top and choose what borders are going to show up. So if I want no borders at all, if I want this to be an invisible table, so it just has, just like the columns were, I can take this and I can select the whole thing, come out here, do no border. It's still here, it's just invisible, incognito. And then I can click on it and start to type in this section, and I can come over and type in this section. And you can do all the same stuff that you would normally do with bullets and formatting. All of that will still work. And as you start to type in there, the cells will expand to fill that area. So if I bring back the lines for a second, just so you can see what happens, it's just pulling in that same information. And you can also, when you're dealing with those cells, let's say I wanted a header cell up at the top, I could actually add that in. If you right click here, you'll get your extra options to add rows or delete rows. So if I want to insert above, and I'm actually even just going to make those merged, which means it's going to be one panel at the top. And maybe I want this to be the NSC newsletter. So we might decide that we wanted something like that, and then I can format that just like everything else. You know, I can make this nice and big, and maybe I want this to be a different color. So what I can do is this cell can be blue and maybe some nice white text with that. And you can see how very quickly it's going to start looking pretty official. And then you can make these. This is just like cells in Excel. You can modify them accordingly. So sometimes what we'll do is we will have topics and a little picture in there. You can do all of that right within here, and it can make a really nice look. And then you can decide, okay, you know what, maybe I don't want it to be so obvious that there are you know, all these divisions. So maybe I want to get rid of all the inside borders, for instance. And now it just looks very simple. So we just have the nice text, and then we can go to the next cell, start to type in some new stuff. So you can really use tables to manipulate and take advantage of all the space on the page, rather than you know, just always having everything kind of pushed to the left. And again, this is good for stuff like newsletters. So at this point, you may decide you want to practice this. So I encourage you to pause the video now and take some time to practice this, try it out if it's something that you're interested in doing. You can use the table, which again, that's under Insert. You can go to Table. And don't forget, you can play around with the table using some of your options right in here for color and for the lines. And you can also use the text there. If you right click on the table, you'll get some options right up at the top here. So take some time to practice that and then come back to the video. So we're going to move on to something a little bit different here. Again, the topics here are a little all over the place because, you know, the use cases you might have are different. So talking about newsletters here, this is how you can create a newsletter from scratch or something similar. Maybe you want to make a pamphlet or something like that. And you can use tables to accomplish that or use the columns to make that happen. You can also, rather than starting off with, you know, starting from scratch and starting from a blank slate, you can use a template. So if I were to go to File here and go to New, and you'll notice I don't even have to hit New to do this. But if I hit new here, I don't know if you've noticed this before, but you have a ton of options for templates here. So with these templates, you can go in and pick from any of these templates and then alter them to fit whatever you're looking for. So I always like to call that out because you do have lots of options here, including things like resumes. So for instance, if we look at our resumes, so if I type in resume here, you'll notice I get a whole bunch of options for resumes, and I'm guessing that Rachel and other folks at BRAC could tell you a little bit more about what type of resume would work best for you. But just so you know, there's lots of options here for you to start from that may or may not work depending on the type of job you're looking to get. There's a couple other things in here, depending if, for instance, if you're looking for a flyer, you can put out lots of different options here, depending on what you're looking for. So don't forget that you have the options for these templates. Now, I did want to quickly call out how this might look a little bit different, the two things that we've talked about so far in Google Docs. So if you happen to be a Google Docs user, and I'm going to start a new Google Doc right here, you can do the things that we just talked about, and they do, in fact, there are templates in here. So for instance, I can go up, and I actually tend to go to help here and just type in template because I never remember exactly where it is. But you'll notice as I start to type it in, it says new document from template. It might be under file. Yep, there you go. If you go file new, you'll get new from template gallery. That's the same one. And what happens there is you get all of these different options. And again, you'll have resumes, you'll have brochures and pamphlets, flyers, all sorts of cool stuff that you can take advantage of here. Some of them, it looks like they're actually add-ons. So do be careful with that. So like you notice there's actually some specific stuff here. Anytime you have an add-on that is an additional risk, that's the same as if you get a Word template from a random place on the internet. You will want to be a little bit more careful with those. If it says add-on, that means that you're, downloading something from somewhere, and we don't necessarily know that it's safe. So always good to vet the people that are giving it to you. In this case, it'd be Up Council, for instance, or PandaDoc here. So something to keep in mind. But there are lots of options here for you to choose from. And then also, I just want to quickly say that column thing that we were talking about, you can do that here as well. I believe it's under format. Yes, it is. So if you go to format here, you have columns, same sort of options, and it works the same way. So you have the columns here, and if you go to more options, you can choose exactly how many. In this case, you go up to 3. I believe Word lets you do more customization there. In this case, it's going to make it just even columns there. But just wanted to let you know that it is possible in Google Docs. So if you're going to be playing around with templates, I'd encourage you to pause the video now and take some time to really try out those templates, and then come back to the video and we'll be talking about something else. All right. So now, we've been talking about documents that you might be creating on your own. So often when you create a document, you might need someone else to review it, especially in a work context. I know for me, that can be just about anything. I write, all sorts of guidelines. I write articles for things. I also write newsletters occasionally. So there's lots of different times when you might need someone to review what you've written. And you can do that all right in Microsoft Word. I want to quickly say that there's a couple different ways that you can do this, especially if you're using Google Docs. A lot of people will use the share option, and they will, if I have my document here, makes me give it a name, but I can give it a link. And so I can say, anyone with the link can view, or maybe I want them to be able to edit. And a lot of people will take a look at that and then say, I want to be able to edit, and then everyone can be in the document at the same time and edit. It's a little creepy if you watch it, because you can watch words just appear on your screen like magic because someone else is typing in there. That's called collaborative editing. And it happens in a lot of scenarios where you're looking to brainstorm, or you just want everyone to get through something a little bit more quickly, or maybe, in cases where you're co-writing a paper or something like that, you have specific sections you're working on versus sections that other people are working on. So in Microsoft Word, this could look a little bit different depending on the type of Microsoft Word that you have. If your Microsoft Word is connected to OneDrive, which is the online version, you can have that collaborative editing. So you have that same share option, and then you're able to and so you can see I could put it into my OneDrive here and I could pull it up. So you could do the same thing. You can share if you happen to have OneDrive. OneDrive is a free option. You can get a OneDrive account if you'd like one. But you're able to share with each other, and then you can have people, go ahead and make changes. I often tell people that it's a great option in some cases, but in other cases, there's kind of a primary owner of the document. So let's say I write a newsletter and I need a couple people to sign off on it and review it and give me suggestions. Then I'm in charge of making sure that all of that feedback is taken into account, and ultimately I'm responsible for the final draft. So in those cases, I wouldn't necessarily recommend collaborative editing in that simple step, because if that's the case, let's just say Rachel was editing with me, she could come in and take my lovely word here and change it to something else. And unless I was watching her do it, I wouldn't know that she did it. So what you can do instead is you can use the review tab. That's this one right up here. And you can use track changes. I use this all the time, and I will actually show you a live example of this that I've used in real life. But this is a place where you can do all kinds of stuff. You can do track changes, which allows you to see every time someone makes a change, including when you make a change. So when you type track changes, you'll notice I can say for everyone. And then anytime someone makes a change on this, it will show up in a different color. So I have it in simple markup right now, but if I go to all markup, you'll notice it crosses things out. So like if I were to type in something new, I'd put in some new bullet points. I could do that in here. I could also continue to add to anywhere else. Anywhere I added would be in red. If there were other folks editing, it would put their stuff in a different color. So like you might have someone whose text is in blue. And this is a super simple way to show everything just kind of as it is. With all markup, you'll see everything, the crossouts and the format changes. So like, let's say I decided to make this section bold. It will put that in there. So it tracks all of that, and it will tell you who made those changes. So you'll see if I hover over it, I'm just hovering with my mouse, it will show me that. So with those track changes, it can be really, really useful to have that. But if it's a little overwhelming to look at all the things that people are deleting, and just so you know, if you move something around in an essay or something like that, it will cross it out in the original spot and add it in the new spot so your paper can look really long. So if that's the case, you might decide that you want to do simple markup. Simple markup will just show the way it would look if it were finalized. It'll still kind of alert you to where the changes are with these red lines. So anytime you make a change, it will put those red lines in there. And you can obviously always toggle to all markup if you want to see it all. But you can also say, I want to see what it looked like before. And you can go to original, and this will show you the original document versus the marked up document. And so you can see everything that people have been doing. You can even get really sophisticated. So like in this case, I can see everyone who has reviewed this. So if there's multiple people, I can say, I only want to see this super important person's feedback. I can do that if I want to. The other thing you can do, and this isn't part of track changes, this is just something in general, is that you can comment on something. So maybe you don't want to edit something, but you just want to comment on the wording. You can highlight, and you'll notice that when I right click, so I right click here, I get the option to do new comment. So if I do new comment, it gives me a little spot here, and then I can type in, I think you need to spell check this because it's not words. And then the person could reply back to me. So you can go through and have comments all over a piece without actually editing anything. So sometimes you maybe don't want to make the change, but you want to suggest the change. And so some people will use comments to make that happen. Other people will say, hey, actually, this isn't what I want you to say here. You should consider adding a section on this. You can add any sort of comment you want in there, and then all the comments will show up. And once someone's addressed this, so maybe someone looks at this comment and they say, okay, I'm ready to go. I can click resolve, and that just turns it gray. That means that it's all set. If someone needs to continue to work on it, I can just do reopen. All right. So you could actually put in comments at the top too. So there is a comments area here. And again, this is all under review. Now, I want to show you a real life version of this because I think it's important to see this in context. This is a set of guidelines that I created for something at work, and you can see that there are tons of comments in here, and we went back and forth with a bunch of different things, and it's all just, you can see people's comments. So like, I think mine are in blue. So this is stuff that I've added in blue, but then there's also stuff in red where people have been making changes or additions, and that's somebody else. Somebody else is in green down here. So you can see that there's a comment down there from someone else. So just something to kind of see. And then there's one more that's in purple. They try to use different colors to make it easier for you to see everything. And you can see the responses back and forth, as well as like if something's been addressed, I've resolved it there. So this can be super helpful because you can see everyone's comments. And if you're using this, everyone else can see those comments too. So when you're in that collaborative editing world, you can put those comments in, other people can respond back to those comments, which is really, really great. And honestly, it's a lot easier to do this rather than trying to, send out a document to 7 people and then having each one of them review it and give you a separate draft back, because then you need to reconcile everything. This just allows you to do it all within one document. So once someone's done all this, someone's reviewed your document, how do you deal with it? So first of all, I'll go to all markup just so that you can see what it looks like. We've got some changes here. We've got some comments. So what you can do is to make this permanent, whatever this person has put in there. So maybe you look at this change here. I just clicked on it and you know that they deleted this section right here. You can go up to the top here and accept changes. So you can accept individual changes. You can go back to people again, you can comment and go back to people. What some people will do is they'll use the reviewing pane. This will show you the different revisions so you can see them all individually. Just kind of a cool thing. It will highlight different things so you can see what it is. But you can also just go into the changes and click on them and then click accept or reject. When I say accept here, that makes it final. So if I do accept, that's crisscross out is going to go away. That section will go away, and then we'll be left with that one piece. So if I click accept, there it goes. So this will show then, basically, you're going to make it look like the simple markup. The reason why you need to accept those changes is because if you try to put that paper in with all those revisions, it's going to be very uncomfortable to read because everyone can see all them. It'd be like handing in a paper that someone had edited with a red pen. You want to make sure that you actually accept your changes so that they go away. So I use all markup for that so that I can do all of that. Now, if you trust your people implicitly, and I say use this wisely, you can choose to accept all changes. And that just says, yep, every change that people have made is great. For that, I recommend before you do that, look at it as simple markup so that you can read exactly what it's going to look like. And then you can do accept all changes, and that will finalize it. You can also choose to stop tracking at that point. Like if you know that people aren't going to be coming in editing, you can do that. So in Google Docs, it's a little bit different. So I do want to quickly show you, you don't have as many options in Google Docs. So I have a fake document here so that I can show you what this looks like. But what you can do in Google Docs, so Google Docs is straight up collaborative editing, like you've seen. So I can go in and edit this, and someone else can go in and edit this just like I'm doing. But you can also choose to do suggesting. So if I go to suggesting, now, if I add something new here, it's going to show up as a suggested change, and then they can choose whether or not to add it by clicking on the check or the X. So accept or reject. And then someone could also say, I don't think that's a good idea, or you can put someone, you can tag someone in this to alert them. So you can go back and forth on that. Using those suggested changes, and they're going to show up, for me, they're showing up in green, but the same color scheme thing applies where someone else's might show up in red, someone else's in blue, stuff like that. But it works the same way, and then you would just be able to click accept or reject there. So what I'll do now is pause again, take some time to practice that, try some of these things out, and then come back to the recording when you're ready, and we'll continue on with another fun topic. All right. So with that, we are going to move on to something completely different. We're going to talk about creating a fillable form in Word. So you might have seen this before. Sometimes you're requesting something from a business and they give you a form to fill out, and you can click on it right away and fill it out. And sometimes that's a PDF, or sometimes that's something else. You can create those in Word if you want to. And in some jobs, this might be something that you do a lot, so that people can just choose to fill in specific things. This is also the same mechanism that you're going to use this for. You can also use to create your own templates. So obviously, you could, if you wanted to, just save as, do file, save as, and make a copy of something that way. But using a template allows you to control what parts of the page someone can edit. So you can lock down specific sections. So just to give you an example of what this will look like, on the real end, I'm going to pull up a particular document that I've created. Give me 1 second to pull that up. So I have a fake florist company that I've created, and I've made a document here. And what's cool about this document is there are specific sections that people cannot edit. So like there's these sections right here that people can't edit, but then they can choose, there's little drop-down menus they can use for stuff. So like I have them select the type of event and they put that in there. And then you can also, so like if you select other here, I could say that I'm actually planning a party. I can put in information about that. There's even things like a date select where I have a little calendar to choose from and I can pick my event. I can also pick a time. So maybe I want this to be in the afternoon, and then I have a budget. So I can choose all of those things right in here, and I can type information. So I can put in bold, I can put in bullet points, whatever I want to do there to make it easier for me to type. I can also format this however I want. So right now it's bolded, but I can put in lots of text to tell them what I want. And I can even add a picture. So this would allow me to upload a picture, but like if I put on the stock files here, just so we have something to go off of. And since this is flowers, all right, those look nice. I'm going to call those. And I can add that picture right in just by clicking on it there, and it will allow me to upload pictures. So we have this lovely form and we're able to fill this out. You can make this. So you can make this kind of form. And what then happens is you can give someone that file, and by default, they'll be able to edit the specific things that will work for them. So we're going to start from scratch to make this happen so that I can show you how this looks. So the first thing you'll need to check is that you have the developer tab. You might not have the developer tab. It's not a tab that everyone has by default. However, you should be able to enable it. So what you can do is you're going to click File here, and then you're going to click Options. Options is all the way down at the bottom right here. And so I can click options. And then as I'm looking here, I'm going to want to pick customize ribbon. And then from here, you'll want to find the developer tab and you'll want to add it. So like I already have it, so it's already in here. But what I would do is I could look in here. It might not be in popular commands, but what you can do is do commands not in the ribbon, and that will show you everything in alphabetical order. You scroll down, you can find developer, which I already have again, but so I'll just click another one so I can show you. And then you click add, and that will add it to your ribbon. So you'll see that it's after view in my case. So view developer, developer's right there. And then once you click OK, that will add it in. You need to do that before you can do any of this next piece. So you can just start to type text if you want to. So like if I had, if we go back to our example of the fake form here, I actually created like a header text area with like the information. So if I double click, you can see that this is all in the header. But you can pull in specific stuff there. But I can also put in some text. So maybe I actually want to pull that in. So I'm just going to copy and paste. So I have some text here. Right now, it's actually in that little form. So go to your developer tab and you can say, thanks for your interest or something like that. And now you have a couple options to add those little form options that we saw, like putting in free text or putting in a little drop-down menu or anything like that. You're going to use this controls section. So in this controls section, all of your controls are over here. I'm going to talk about some of the ones that are the most common, the ones that we used in that form. And then we'll talk about how to lock it down so that only certain people can edit it. So from here, what you can do is you can go ahead and try some of these out. So the first two, the A's and the other A's, are text. So the difference between them, so like for instance, you could say something like, tell me about yourself. Maybe this is a little survey that you're making for someone. I could put this in. This will allow me to have what's called rich text. That means all the fancy formats, all the cool stuff, and also they can type a lot. So they can type as much as they want. They can make this entire great American novel where they have all this text, and we're gonna, go ahead and put all of that in there so they can keep going and going and going for as long as they want. So that's one way to do it, but you can also do plain text, and plain text won't have those pretty formatting options. So I could have like a bold here and I can, put all of that in together. But if I do that here, I can type in text, but it's not gonna, oh, it is allowing me to bold there. That's surprising. This is supposed to be a plain text that's allowing me to do that. So I'm kind of surprised. But anyway, so you have the option to put in the plain text. In general, I tell people to put rich text unless you have a specific reason you would want plain text. Most of the time, people just go ahead and put that straight in there. All right, so we'll go in order of the form so that I can show you a little bit about everything. So we had the text one, which is super easy. We also have this drop down where I've made all these options here. So there are two different types of drop downs. They're kind of small. So, and unfortunately, I can't zoom in on the ribbon, but you can see right here, there are two options. One of them is a drop down where you can select multiple items. So if I go and I choose here, I will show you in a second, but you have multiple items, combo box, and you have regular drop down. So a drop down will only let you pick one option. But like, let's say you had something where you needed to have someone select all the states they've ever lived in, and maybe they've lived in a few. You want them to be able to check off multiple options. You could do that. Or maybe it's an interest list and you have a bunch of different activities you want someone to show their interest in. You could do that as well. So you have both of those options. I'll show you both of them so that you can see what they would look like. So for instance, maybe we're going to do all the colors you like. Now you'll notice right now I'm just seeing choose an item. I can also click on this little 3 dots, but it doesn't do anything right away. Now, I can right click on this if I really wanted to, but it's not going to do anything. Where you change the settings here is under properties. It's not the most intuitive thing. You have to click on it and then choose properties here. And then this is going to give you your options. So for instance, what you can do is you can say, I want to add options to my dropdown. So maybe I want to do what colors do you like? And so I'm going to add blue, and I'm going to add green and yellow and red. So this will allow me to pick from multiple options here. I'm also going to get rid of choose an item because that seems silly. So I'll just click this and click remove. But it will show up blue, green, yellow, red, just like this. And so when I click OK, now when they go to choose an item, I'm going to have those options. So I can choose that. So you can do this for any of them. So if I go to the next one, so if I choose here, I can go to properties and I'm adding them all in. Now what you should be able to do, so if I put these in, you can choose one. I thought you could choose both. I'm surprised that it's not letting you. That's so strange. That's at least how that's supposed to work. But anyway, you can do that drop down. I'm surprised. I'm not really sure what the difference is then. I'll have to look into that. But you'll have both of those options. So you'll have your drop down, and then you'll also have that. It's not happy because I have another one right there. But I could choose and toggle between them. Yeah. So that would be how you do all of your drop-down menus. So if we look back at our thing, that's how we did the budget. That's how we did the time of the event. However, we haven't done the date of the event yet. Luckily, this one's super easy. All you have to do is click on the little calendar option, and then this will give you that option to click a date. Now, by default, it's just going to have that little section. So if you need to give someone instructions about like what the date's for, you can say something like date of event, and then you can format this accordingly. So maybe I want this to be bold and I want it to be larger. I can do all of those things right within there. And then they can select the date, just like that. All right. Now, some of the other ones, so if I go back to the developer tab here, like adding an image. So we talked about adding an image. Here you can just do the little image option and it will give you that block here. What happens then is that people could just do that. But you can see here, you've just got a very simple image. If you wanted to, though, you can use this to put an image on the page. So you can make it so that they can add an image, but you can also just put an image there and make it stick, basically, so that if people are looking at this, they have to see that image. So that's the mechanics of adding these in. I do want to quickly talk about, so there's kind of two things that can happen here when you're using these controls. One, you can make this fillable form. So you can fill in, you can give sections for people to fill things in or specify specific information, like the text or an image or picking a choice. Oh, I didn't show a checkbox yet, but so like for instance, it's okay to email me about this topic or something like that. And what you can do is right at the beginning here, we want to add a checkbox. We just add a checkbox just like that, and then they can click on it to check the checkbox. You got your properties too. But if you want, you can change the symbol. So right now it's an X. I can do change and make it a check mark. I forget where the check mark is, but you can scroll through all of the symbols to do that and look for the check mark if you want to. But the X is usually pretty straightforward. All right. So that's one thing you can do is you can add all of those and have people fill them in. So like, we're asking for certain information and people are able to fill it in. The other thing you can do is make a template with these. So maybe you have specific things on the page that you want to be constant and certain things that people can add in. So maybe you have, a bunch of text, but you have a specific section where people can put in their own information. And then you have images and things like that. You can use these to put that stuff in, and then to make them locked down so that nobody can touch them. So let's say this was a whole paragraph of information that we had that we wanted people to see. We could take this and go to properties. And then what you do is you would use the content cannot be edited or deleted to make it so that it's completely locked. That means that if someone comes in here and they try to type, I'm hitting on my keyboard right now, you can't see me, but I'm hitting my keyboard and nothing happens and I can't get rid of this. And then the way that I would get rid of it if I really wanted to is go to properties, and then I could adjust the locking. So you can lock things that way if you want to. The other thing you can do is that rather than doing that, you can make it so that anything that's outside of these, so maybe you have like the fillable forms that people need, you can use restrict editing. And you can say under here, you get a panel that comes up, editing restrictions. You can say, I only want people to be able to fill in forms. That's all I want people to be able to do. That means that they can only go to the places where there's a form to fill out, so they can come and they can select things. So to give you a sense of what that would look like in this form, that would mean that anything outside of those content controls that have the specific fillable form aspects, all of that would be locked down. Everything outside of that would be locked down. So that's an easier way to do it. If you want to make everything text and then do that, you can do that. The other cool part is that when you go to these different templates, so like if I were to go to new here and pick a specific template, these templates are using that same content control. So like this travel newsletter, if I click create here, we have a template. This here, that's just a content control. I can come in here and go to properties and I can change something. So this has just, I can go ahead and type something new in here. I can add an image here. This is just a content control image. So you can pull in different items and adjust things based on that. So this is what templates can really do, is you can create something this complicated and then just have places for people to fill things in and go accordingly. Right. So I will say, unfortunately, that is not, this whole mechanism is not something that's available in Google Docs. At least not without using a certain like extension or add-on. So Google Docs as it is doesn't allow you to do this kind of control adding where we're able to add these selectable options. So just something to keep in mind as you're doing this is that that's something you would really want to use Microsoft Word for. There are ways to do it by using specific add-ons, but again, you have to be careful with add-ons because anytime you're adding them on, you're using, their code, and that comes with a risk. All right. So I'm going to take some time here. You can pause the video if you'd like and take a second and practice some of this. And then when you're ready for the last topic we're going to talk about today, which is mail merges, we will continue with that. All right. So I am going to X out of some of the documents that I've been playing with here so that we can talk a little bit about merges, mail merges. So mail merges allow you to take information that you have about a bunch of people. Maybe you need to set up a bulk letter. Like you have a letter that needs to go out to a whole bunch of people, but you want to customize it. You want it to say, the person's name. So like for me, it'd be like, Dear Sarah, and then a bunch of information. And maybe you have a couple specific things about me that you need to put in there. You can do all of that using a mail merge. A mail merge basically uses Word and Excel to make something happen. So if you haven't taken our Excel classes, we do have recordings on the Excel classes. And for those of you who have, you may notice some familiar stuff coming from the documents that we're going to use today. So I'm going to pull up our sample data here just so that we've got this for everybody. So the sample data that we have is this spreadsheet full of information about people. So I'm going to pull this up and pull it onto my screen. All right, there we go. All right. So I have this spreadsheet here with a bunch of people's names, and I have their email addresses, and I also have information about their t-shirt sizes and favorite colors and all sorts of stuff. So I've got all sorts of information about them, and I can go ahead now and try to make a mail merge. So I have this letter, which I'm going to pull up too. So I've created the skeleton for this letter. This part you're probably all able to do, just a super simple formal letter. It's about a fake conference that's not happening for real. But I know that I want some things in there. I want the person's name and address, and I also want their name right here. And we're going to put all of that information directly into this mail merge here. Now, I'm going to go and use, again, we're using this spreadsheet here. You need to have the Excel spreadsheet ready to go, and then you have your Word document as well. So to do a mail merge, there's actually a whole tab for that. It's called the Mailings tab. And you'll notice that there are also options for like envelopes and labels. We're not going to cover those today, but those work very similarly, where you're going to be able to create address labels or print on envelopes with people's name and address using all the same sort of information. But we're just going to go straight to starting a mail merge. Now, the cool thing about mail merges is that if you haven't done it before, it does really walk you through it now. I think it used to be harder to do, but it's definitely something you shouldn't be intimidated by. So if you go to that select mail merge here, you'll notice I have a bunch of options. I can do a letter or an email, or I can do envelopes or things like that. But I'm just going to do the step-by-step wizard. This is going to let me do everything all at once. It's going to prompt you for the things you need. You're going to be able to try everything right there. So I recommend people use the wizard because it makes it easier. So what's going to happen is right over on the top here, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning because it looks like this document might have already had it there. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick the type of document that you're working on here, letters, emails, etc. In this case, this is a letter. We're going to have this letter ready to go. We're going to click letters here and then click next. Now, this is the starting document we have, but if you hadn't written the letter already, you could pick the document that you want. But to be honest, most people want to use the current document because you've written the letter. It's always a good practice to just go to the letter that you want to use. So use the current document, or you could use one of the templates that you've been seeing. Now we're going to choose our lists. So I do have a list in here, but just so that we can make sure that we've got that, I'm just going to click select a different list. If you don't have the list in there, it will just say upload a list. So I'm going to click select here, and I'm going to go to my desktop because that's where my list happens to be. And I can pull in the list and click open. Now, in my list, in my Excel spreadsheet, I have two tabs, two sheets in here. So just something to keep in mind, you're going to want to make sure that you pick the right one if you have more than one. In this case, it's fundraiser RSVPs. Just something to keep in mind that it will ask you which one's which, because you can only use one sheet. So here it is, and I click OK. Oh, it doesn't like it. Hold on. Not sure what's happening there. I am so sorry. I think it's not so happy. Okay, there's the browse at least. We can go ahead and upload it properly. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and pop that in. I was having some connection issues before. Maybe that's why. That's so strange. Normally, this is pretty straightforward. Let me go ahead and grab the document again. I think it's giving me a little bit of trouble for some reason. Ooh, it just restarted Word. I think it was a little mad at me. There we go. All right, so now I think we've got it. I'm so sorry. I was having some issues here. I'm going to save this real quick, and this is a document that I've got. We're going to start our merge from scratch. I'm going to do my browse. I'm going to grab my document here. Now it looks like it's online, so it's not happy with me. I am so sorry. Give me a minute. I will get this back up and running. I'm going to download a new copy of both of them. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm going to pull this all back in and get a new copy of both the sample data and the all right, because then we'll have just a nice clean copy to use. So I've got my sample data here, and I'm also going to grab my fake letter that I've created here. Again, nothing to be worried about. That can happen sometimes where you've got a document and it's misbehaving. And, when that does happen, it's always a good idea to just try it out, see how it's going. And, if it's not working out for you, you can always go ahead and, re-download the document or save a copy of it and then try again. I usually recommend people try that out because sometimes it will just make things a little easier for you. All right, so I'm going to pull up a new copy of that document, and I've got my my sample data here as well. So we're going to start that from scratch. Apologies, that does happen sometimes. I'm going to go to mailings here, start the mail merge, and we're working on a letter. We want to use the current document. Now I want to go browse for my list. I'm going to go to my desktop and find the one that I just got. Now it's happy. So I'm going to click on that one right there. We're going to use that particular one. Now, what's going to happen is you can see all of the different recipients. Now, maybe this is only going to some specific people. So I could, if I want to, I could filter this. And again, you guys know how to filter if you've taken our Excel classes, but we have our filter option and you can filter based on a specific field. So maybe I want the RSVP to be equal to yes. So that could be really important in some cases. So you can do that and it will auto filter your spreadsheet. So just something to keep in mind. In this case, I'm just going to keep it as is. You could also do things like you might decide that, if you have local mail versus out of town mail and you need to do that, you can go by city, filter out specific cities and do your mail merges separately, or you can sort. So there's lots of options here for what you can do. But for now, we're going to say that all of my data is good. There's one thing that's something to keep in mind. When you have your spreadsheet here, your mail merge is only going to be as good as the data you're putting in there. So if your spreadsheet has an incorrect address, mail merge isn't going to be able to fix that. So just something to keep in mind here. All right, so I'm going to click OK. This looks good. And we've got our list. So now I'm going to click write your letter. Luckily, we've already written out some of our letter here, but you can start to add information. So we have this name and address area. So rather than having that, I'm going to pull in an address block. What this allows me to do is put the address in. So as I'm clicking it in, what's going to happen is you can actually put in specific information. So they give you, just as a little trick, a preview of what the first one's going to look like. Now, as you're looking at this, you might notice there's one problem. So we have Shannon Millier and her address and the city, but there's no state. Now, I know there's a state in there, but it didn't figure it out. So what I can do is I can come here and go to match fields. So if I go to match fields, you'll notice that you've got all the stuff for the address block. So we've got our address, and then we've got our state, and the state isn't matched, but I can come over here. If I look at my spreadsheet, we have a column called home state, and you can see all the states in there. So what we can do is pretty easily just go, okay, for state, we're going to say that it's home state. And then when I click OK, it's going to add that in. So you can make sure the address looks okay. And you can even preview a few of them. And I recommend you do that. You can actually skip through and look at a few of them and make sure that they all look okay. And once you're ready, you can click OK. So it just puts in address block, just like that. But it will look the way that we saw it to look. And just so you know, these options are also at the top. So you can see address block up here. Insert merge field is how you get all the other merge fields. So these are a couple suggestions, but there's a whole bunch of things you could do. Basically, anything that's in your spreadsheet is going to be able to be put in here. Something that sometimes people like to do is highlight their merge fields so that they show up in this kind of gray color. It just makes it a little easier to see when you have them. So for instance, maybe I want to put in their first name. I'm going to actually, now, so I could do insert merge field first name if I want to. But you should know that there's also a way to do that by doing greeting line. That's this one right here. And that's going to allow you to put in a different version of that. So if I do greeting line, it's going to do dear and then someone's name. So in this case, I want to do their first name. So I'm going to look for the option in the format that makes the most sense. And if it can't figure out the name, you have a default. So it will actually allow you to put in like to whom it may concern. And then you can go through and start to see everybody's names starting to look okay. All right. And then we have the rest of our letter. So I could put in more merge fields if I wanted to. So if I wanted to, I could say something like, we have your t-shirt size because that's one of the fields that's in here, or we have your donation or whatever. So you can go in and make all of those changes and you can pull in that information into this letter. So it doesn't matter where you are, basically wherever your cursor is, you can do insert merge field and then pull in whatever one you want. We can say something like, thank you for your generous donation of, and then I think this is just a number, but we can look and see because you get to preview next. That's that next piece here. But what you can do is just put a $sign and then it will have the number. So you can put that in and it's super easy. So at any point you can preview. And you'll see here, we're looking at a specific person. This is the 10th person on our list. I can use the arrows up here to look for people. You can even find a specific person if you want to look at them specifically, but you can see as we're looking at it, this is all the different letters that we'd want to create. I think there's 200 people in this list. They're all fake. But yeah, so you can see, now there's a problem. You might have noticed that Shannon didn't donate anything. So it's always a good idea, again, remember your data here. You want to make sure that, whenever you're automating like this, it's very literal. It will say, okay, you want to put the amount that they donated. If they donated $0, I'm going to say, thank you for your donation of $0. So something to keep in mind that you might want to be very careful about that. You might decide that you want to filter out anybody that has that donation and do them separately, if this were the case for you. So in this case, I could decide, oh no, this person, donated $0 and maybe I looked and they're the only one. I could just say exclude this recipient and then they're not in there. Okay. And then all you have to do is complete the merge. So what's going to happen is you're going to be able to either edit the individual letters, which will show up in a new document, all page by page. Or you could just print them and then you can print each one and it will print all just like this. It won't highlight like it's showing here. Again, that's just something that's visual for us on the editing side. But when you go to print them, it's going to look just like this, of course, without the spell check here. So I do want to show you one other example of what a mail merge can look like with an email instead. But this is the example I have for what it can look like for a letter that you might have. Now, if I wanted to, I'm going to go and make a new document. And I know I have an example. I have a fake version of this. So now that we've had that, maybe we want to do a confirmation email to people. So I have a fake version of this. I put in the text already just so that you don't have to watch me type everything. But we know that we want to have some sort of greeting. We want to throw in their t-shirt size and their preferred color of the t-shirt. And we want to thank them for their donation again. So if I go to mailings and start mail merge and do email messages now, when I click this, Word's going to look a little different. Because it's an email, it's going to make it look kind of like an email editing area. You can still edit the same way you would normally, but I just like to say it does look a little different. So we're going to do an email, and I'm going to do step by step with that email message. So we have our document, we're ready to go. We're going to select our recipients, and I'm going to grab our spreadsheet again. We're going to use the same one. And we've already looked at our data before, and we know Shannon donated $0, so we're going to take her out. And then for this case, because we want to have only the people that are actually attending, we're going to do RSVP equal to yes. So they're all there. All right. So now we're going to write our message, and we're going to add in the stuff we want. So first we want that greeting line. So I can put in a greeting line, and maybe we want this to be dear, and then whatever their name is. So we have their name. So dear Casey is our first one, for instance. All right. That's okay. We're sending this email to confirm your attendance, and then we put in their t-shirt size. So for this, we would just go up to the merge field and find t-shirt size. And then I just put these as bullets with a little bold there just because I thought it would look nice. And we have favorite color. And then we want to put in the amount, and I put the $sign ahead of it because in this case, our donations, if you look at the spreadsheet, were just plain number, or at least it's reading them as plain numbers. So we have that there, and then we're all set. And then we can preview. So we've got our preview here, and it will show you this specific one, and you can do the same thing. You can toggle. It will show you the different, all this will change accordingly. So you can see those 3 things are going to change for everyone, just kind of a cool thing. And then you finish and merge, and it will make it all set for the email. So you can send the whole thing by email. And that's where you'd be able to actually put in send email messages. And to get that, you're going to get your subject line, and then off you go. So you can merge this to email. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to send out a bunch of fake emails, but that's where you'd go, and then you'd be all set. So just to note that you can do envelopes and labels in kind of the same way. Again, you need to have those addresses available, but once you have them, you're all good. So like you've got your envelope here, it would work kind of the same way where you can throw in the address. Or you could pull in the label there. So you can use the mail merge to do that as well. So like if I decided I wanted to do that, I would just go back. I'm going back here so you can see it, but you can pick, I want to do a label, and then you have your starting document here. And usually that document layout is going to be based off of whatever labels you're using. Part of the reason why I don't have address labels on me, so we're not going to be able to go over that, but that's how you'd be able to change your layout there to make it so that it matches what address labels would look like. And again, with label options, it will give you all the different options given the type of vendor you have. So if you're using ACE labels, you can find those in the system. All right. So that was the last topic we were here to talk about today. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And I hope that this was something that you found helpful. Definitely send your feedback to the BRAC Center, to Rachel and her team, because we would love to hear from you if there's something else you want to learn about here. But hopefully this will help you save some time and do some cool stuff in Microsoft Word.
Thank you, Sarah. It was a great class. I hope everyone was able to take something away from it. As Sarah mentioned earlier, we do have Excel classes available too. So find those links, or if you need them, certainly reach out to me. They're on our website, but I can send them to you directly. And thanks again. And if anyone needs help with any kind of career development or employment assistance, don't hesitate to reach out to the BRAC Center. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.